What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Legacy Investor Podcast. I'm Cameron Philgreen, and I just got to sit down with Todd Vinson. It was such a good conversation. If you like, we didn't talk about investing and money a whole lot. We talked more about emotional and mental health. And man, if you are an entrepreneur, a solopreneur, someone who works hard and might have a tendency to, or a proclivity to burnout or work too hard or not have your priorities in line, like this is for you. We talked about a lot of different things. He introduced me to this thing called the Peace Index. It's provision, purpose, personal health, people, and place. And basically you just take these 5 things and average them out. They actually have an online test that you can take and average them out. He says he does it every week. And I think I'm going to start doing it every week just to give myself a grid for where am I at and what priorities do I not have in line, what needs to change. And anyway, I hope you guys get a lot out of this conversation. I did drop some links in the description for you to check out and ways that you can reach out to Todd. He's just a wealth of knowledge and looking to help people out, especially people in my stage of life and perhaps your stage of life where, hey, we're in the grind and we're running our own businesses and we're working hard and we have growing families. And he has just he's won at life in a lot of ways, and he's just done a lot of amazing things. And now he's teaching others how to do these amazing things and not burn out like he did, which you'll learn about in the podcast. So without further ado, let's hop into my conversation with Todd Vinson. All right, guys, welcome back to the Legacy Investor Podcast with Cameron Philgreen. I'm here with Todd Vinson, who I actually know him kind of through some of my employees. And man, he has a lot going on. First of all, we connected because we're both coffee people. He's founder of Eote Coffee, founder of Willow Springs Boys Ranch, owns Overlander Consulting, and many other things that maybe he can just tell you about himself, brag on himself a little bit. But welcome, Todd, to the podcast.
Hey, Cameron, thanks. Excited to be on here with you and have a good conversation over a cup of coffee.
Yeah, man. So tell us what all you're doing. Well, give us not just what you're doing now, but kind of your background and how, like, what was the journey? I mean, it sounds like it's been a lot.
That's a loaded question. So I think some of my best successes are by some of my biggest failures or some of my biggest struggles. But my wife and I founded and operated Willow Springs Boys Ranch in Chandler, Oklahoma for 20 years. Chandler is a little spot on the map between Tulsa and Oklahoma City. Highland Dairy's there with the ceramic fiberglass cows that move all over the field there, and you wonder if they're going to be pulling a sleigh or, what are they done with the cows this time you drive by. But out of that, I really, as a hobby, and when I'm honest, probably an escape, started roasting coffee out of my garage. It was a good time for me to escape, and I was dealing with a lot of brokenness, people that we served, trying to serve well our staff, and then dealing with some of my own baggage and challenges and hurts and wounds growing up. Out of that, that hobby turned into Eote Coffee, and Eote stands for Ends of the Earth, and was inspired by the scripture Acts 1:8. Moved into that, roasting coffee, and we thought it'd be a great time to open a coffee shop about 4 to 6 months before the pandemic hit. And so all the challenges that we faced with that then rolled really on into working with Giant Worldwide. Jeremy Kubicek and Steve Cockrams are the co-founders. They have an office in the same building that Eote Coffee's in. They also have a London office, and I was a client for 7 years with Giant, and just great leadership principles, how to lead yourself. One of their mantras is know yourself to lead yourself. And if you don't know yourself, you can't lead yourself very well. And if you're not leading yourself, you certainly can't lead other people. So that's really the journey that I've been on, elevator pitch on over 30 years, just understanding myself, my voice, my leadership styles, and putting myself in a better position that I'm healthy, and then in turn can have a healthy marriage, interact healthy
Yeah.
in a healthy manner with my kids and the people that I lead, whether it be in business or nonprofit or, now doing coaching and consulting. That's kind of where my sweet spot is. Took me a long time to get here, but I feel like at 57, I'm finally right operating in my sweet spot. So it's a fun place to be in this season.
Yeah, well, if I can be doing anything as meaningful as you when I'm 57, I'll be really happy, a happy man. So very, very cool. Can I ask why the Boys Ranch? It sounds like maybe that's part of your story and part of your growing up, perhaps. Yeah, why the Boys Ranch? What inspired you guys to do that?
Yeah. Man, I think just having a heart for kids, heart for the underdog. My
Mm,
great grandparents had a dairy in Ryan, Oklahoma, that was named Willow Springs. My background in high school and college was FCA, Young Life, Kanakuk, and so I was always pouring into kids. And so got my undergrad at OU and master's in counseling, and um, was a youth pastor for a while. And so that was always just part of something that I
mhm,
did and something I enjoyed. And I think when you saw the Young Life and Kanakuk model and seeing how you can have influence,
mm,
just like working with kids who were falling through the cracks, and spent a large part of my time and raising my kids out on 180 acres. And we had a few
mm,
animals, and we had we cut hay or outsourced that, but our primary product was that we were raising people and raising boys, and then learning how to lead well. And I think most of my learned experiences have been on how not to do it. And so I think, working with emerging leaders, guys in their late 20s, 30s, and 40s, and helping giving them tools, and investing in themselves. So when they are in their 50s, the return on investment on that is so much greater. Part of my story is that I just really worked myself to death, to the point of, getting down to 188 pounds, all the pressures of burnout and anxiety and stress of feeling like it was all up to me, and just really having a Lone Ranger mentality.
mm.
And it's really hard to lead other people well when you're not doing it yourself. I was given to other people, but I really wasn't treating myself with that same amount of intention, being intentional, grace and care. I extended that to other people, but I didn't extend it to myself, and that's just not sustainable. I bootstrapped it for about 20 years until I pulled all the straps off my boots, and I literally found myself in my. She was 8 at the time. My youngest daughter ended up in the floor, thought I was dying of a heart attack, and the
Mm,
first thing I found on the floor was her pink fleecy Hello Kitty blanket. And
mm.
so I talk about that Hello Kitty blanket moment with guys all the time. And I was just running on empty for the longest time. And to use a coffee metaphor, there may have been a 5 gallon Carlisle that I was pouring out 16 ounces, but I was only putting about 8 ounces back into
Mm.
the Carlisle. And so eventually you run dry. And that's what happened to me April 4th, April 6th of 2016. And so it was a long, painful journey to get there. It was painful to get on the other side of that, but just knowing that there is hope on the other side, and
Yeah.
really understanding, what is your drive and your identity, and what's the well that you're pulling from to do that, were some really hard lessons and some self evaluation that I had to go through on myself. And thankfully, guys like Jeremy Kubicek at Giant and a
Mm.
host of other people that were in my inner circle and on my team walked me through that to get to the other side.
Well, I know it's probably years, months or years of work, internal work and work with the
Mhm.
Lord, but take us into that, with as much time as you want, from the Hello Kitty blanket moment to now. I mean, and through that journey, I mean, there's a lot of high level people watching this, people that, I mean, I was just in a room with 11 other guys a few days ago, and almost everyone around the table had had some sort of panic attack moment,
Yeah,
kind of like that. And luckily, I haven't, praise God, and I don't want to,
absolutely.
right?
No, you don't.
So, so,
You don't want my
so,
Hello Kitty blanket.
so take us into that, man. Like for people that are listening, How do we avoid those moments? How do we keep God first? How do we keep our marriage intact? Our,
Yeah.
kids top priority? What have you done? What habits have you formed? Just like give us the whole spiel.
Yeah, I mean, no one ever says, you know what, I want to end up in the ER, think I'm dying of a heart attack, and be wrestling with guilt and shame, and losing weight, not be able to sleep at night, and just being overwhelmed by anxiety. But I didn't get there on purpose. It was unintentionally and accidental, but the things that I did were also accidental that led me to get there. Um, Starting a ranch and pouring into other people, and just growing up in the church, and having a faith background. I think a lot of it was out of identity and wanting approval by other people, whether it's parents, whether it's your team, whether it's your investors or your donors or your board. I mean, so much of my identity I was putting in 60, 70-hour weeks. I lived where I worked. And so it felt like Hotel California from the Eagles. You can enter, but you can never leave. And so I clocked in 96. That's not right. 2000. Wow, 96. Yeah, 96. And then I clocked out in 16. And really, it looked like a U-Haul, but really it was an ambulance that just rolled me out
Mm.
of that 188 property, because I just really, uh, you'd think with a master's in counseling, I'd have a lot of self-awareness, but man, my drive was to take care of other people. And then, wanting to belong, wanting to be accepted. And I think one of the biggest things that helped me was Giant, because it gave me tools and language. It gave me a language to what I really could never express on my own. And so Giant has a tool called the Five Voices that really it's based out of Myers-Briggs, and
Mm.
Myers-Briggs came from the Jungian archetypes. And so I really took those 16 categories from Myers-Briggs and reduced it down into five. And so what I learned was I played something on TV. I just watched the last episode of Yellowstone last night, me and everybody else.
Yeah.
But the character I played on TV really wasn't who I was. And so I played the guardian. I played the operations guy. I was a property manager. I was a people manager. I was a fundraiser. I was PR. I was HR. And the joke was, anytime I asked me a question, he goes, "Hey, just let me talk to maintenance." Oh, I am maintenance. Oh, you know what? Let me check in with the contractor. Oh, I am the contractor. And so I learned to be, at least functionally good at a lot of things that I should have never been good at. And so the role that I was operating in, as I took the five voices with Jeremy, I realized that really I'm a connector, I'm a creative, I'm a pioneer. I pioneer out of relationship and out of creativity. I'm not just charge the mountain with the bulldozer and let's just go get things done like a general. It looks a lot
Mm.
different, lot softer, a lot more finesse. The two things that I'm not the best at is being a nurturer. And you would think, being a youth pastor, working at Kanakuk, doing these other things, starting a boys ranch, even starting a coffee shop. Oh, you like people. You must be really good at nurturing. Well, it's my blind spot. I'm not near as good at it as I think I am. I like creating systems and things in place for those things to happen, but I'm not the best person to execute those things on very present day operation. I'm always looking down the road, looking into the future. And then to make those things work, you need a guardian who's big into systems, big into processes. And those guardian people are the basket to my balloon. But I didn't realize that I was doing all those things. And Giant introduced me to a tool called the 70-30 principle. And that principle means that you should spend 70% of your time doing the things that are life-giving, that's your natural abilities,
Mm.
that get you up in the morning. And if you do that, then you've got the capacity for the 30% that, for me, being right-handed, is left-handed things. I've got to learn how to do those things. It takes a lot of effort. It's a lot more draining for me to do something with my left hand than it is with my right. But what I realized is I just kind of went through a self-assessment. Man, I was living upside down. I was living 2080. the 20% of what I
Mm.
really enjoyed, I found myself only doing about really 15 to 20% of the time. And once I created this thing and launched it, I was doing all the things. I was responsible for those things, but I took on the execution of those things when I really should have brought someone else onto the team and partnered with or outsourced those so I could operate in my strengths and we have capacity and grow and scale instead of me really being down in the weeds and things that I really wasn't the best person in the room to be doing those things. And so that was a long, hard, humbling lesson to finally get to that point. But you know what? You are a little more um, apt to make a change when you're underwater. It's like, oh
Mm.
wow, I can't do this anymore, and really fall on the floor and having a heart attack. Thought I was having a heart attack. It was panic, a full blown panic attack and anxiety, and that's what my body had been. My mind finally heard what my body had been saying for years, and
Mm.
I. It was a point of surrender for me, and it was humbling to go to an ER and you not get a pat on the back or a watch or a big retirement or severance package. You know what? They give you medication and your wife takes your phone away from you and you go dark for 6 months
Ooh.
and then you look up and you've resigned from the board and you've walked away from a thing that you had founded and poured your life into. And so as a man, there was a lot of defeat, guilt, and shame in that. And it really took 5 or 6 years of rest and recovery. But I had a handful of people that walked through that with me, medical doctors, a Christian psychologist, my pastors, my wife, and a small group of men that walked through that with me.
Wow.
Long. I mean, talk about I can't remember the theologian that talked about the darkest night of the soul. I mean, it had been going on for a while, but it wasn't addressed until I had really circled up and started receiving the same kind of help that I gave other people. And I think that's where, for the first time in my life, even though if I'd grown up from an early age as a follower of Jesus, it really wasn't till 46 when I was 100% surrendered to Him and allowed other people to help walk through that with me.
Mm.
Just like a Sherpa, there was other people that I had to put my trust in. First, I had to go back to a lower altitude and recover and get healthy, and then to watch these group of people over the last really almost 8 or 9 years now walk with me, back to base camp and then camp
Mm.
1 and camp 2, and coming from a position of health. And I think a changed mindset that I don't have to be Superman. No one expects me to be Superman and do it all on my own.
Mm.
We were created to operate in community,
Mm.
and if I'm wise, I surround myself with people that are better in those areas than I am. I may be the air traffic controller, so to speak, but I can't do every single facet of anything, to be honest. And so that was a race to the bottom for me to realize that oh wow, I'm not invincible. And really, the last 10 years have been a journey of just being wise and having discernment and not doing it on your own. And
Yeah.
so messy and
Well,
ugly, but
Todd,
man, to be on the other side is powerful.
yeah, thank you for sharing all that, man. That's and being vulnerable and bringing us in. That's really powerful. So for the guys or girls, but for the people that
Mhm,
might be at the apex of that, in a
mhm.
week they're gonna have that Hello Kitty blanket moment. You
Yeah.
know, what advice would you give? Maybe you can take that 4 to 6 years of process for you and water it down to 5 or 10 minutes for us. Like, what advice would you give those people? What have you learned, so that we can not just avoid that moment, but also the people that have experienced that moment that
Mhm.
need change, that need to know they don't need to be Superman. Like, what advice would you give? What do you got for us?
Um, I think probably, I talked to you about 70/30
Mm.
and five voices. I think that the tool that pushed me over the edge, and Jeremy Kubicek shared these things with me, and the next week I found myself in the ER. But it's a really simple tool called the Peace Index. And I mean, all these tools that I'm talking to you about are all subjective, but you know what? My subjectivity was my reality. If you
Mm.
ask me what the best coffee shop is in Norman or Oklahoma City or Tulsa or Waco. Obviously, Waco is for keeps, hands down. But I know what a good cup of coffee is. And so as I go through the peace index on my own life, it's 5 factors, external factors that impact my internal peace. The first is purpose, what gets me up in the
Okay.
morning. Second is my place. So it could be my office here, it could be my back porch, it could be my chair by the fireplace in the morning that I read, have my coffee, spend time with God before I start my day. It's my people. Think about the 10 to 15 people in your circle of influence that you engage with all week long or you spend the most time with. I think number 4 is personal health. And so it's your emotional, your spiritual, your physical health. And so, I mean, that was one. I worked really hard. I didn't take care of myself personally. I wasn't exercising. I wasn't sleeping, getting good sleep. I wasn't eating.
Mm.
Lost a ton of weight, and not a good way to do it. And then the last factor is your provision. So your provision is what you need, not necessarily what you want. And I won't bust into the Rolling Stones song there. Okay, I will. You can't always get what you want, but if you try real hard, you might just find you get what you need. And so, am I making what I need to cover the expenses for the lifestyle that I'm living? And you take each one of those categories and you just score them yourself 1 to 100 and then divide them by 5. I mean, that's your peace
Mm.
index. That's the
Okay,
number
so
that's
so
floating
I'm
over
gonna
your
go into
head.
this real quick. If you're taking
Yeah.
notes, purpose, place, people, personal health, and provision. You
Yeah.
score them 1 to 100,
Right.
divide by 5,
That's your
and then
peace
that's like your
index at
peace
any
index.
given
Okay.
moment. And I do that weekly
Wow.
now. End of my week on Fridays, I'm wrapping up my week and winding down. I do that just as a self-assessment to see where I'm at.
Wow.
And it's powerful. It got to the point that I made a spreadsheet and happy to share it. It's got those categories on it, and I got a little notes section. And so I do a little check-in on every Friday. And the end of this month, I'll look at the whole 52 weeks, see my successes. Before I just looked at my failures and I beat myself up. Now, hey, you know what? What are the successes that I've experienced? And I've done this 3 years now. So you know what? I wonder where I was in 2023 or
Wow.
2022. Wow, I've made a lot of progress there. Now, in the past, I wouldn't do that. I would go straight to dominate myself and beat myself up on, well, I didn't quite make my goals there.
Mm.
And looking at the 1 or 2 that are lower than I'd like for them to be, I'd highlight that whole column. And instead of beating myself up and being critical, I'm going, well, what if I'm curious? Why is that? Well, let me look at the notes section. Oh, we know you had a lot of unexpected expenses with your car or your home or your business. You know what? I've had some health issues, or oh my gosh, there's been an economy and there's been an election and there's been all these other forms of chaos in my life. And so that allows me then to roll into the next year. What are my goals for next year? Well, you know what? This column that I'm dissatisfied with, this one of those 5 categories are the things that I set reasonable, obtainable goals for the next year and start writing those out and saying those out loud to myself on things that I want to improve on. And so that tool right there has been a life changer because it changes my
Wow.
mindset. I start
Yeah.
looking at what I can control and what is out of my control. What can I influence? What can I not influence? And then lay those out. And when I write them down, I look at it and I say it. Just going through that really starts rewiring my brain and focusing on what I have control of, and then allowing God to enter into that and walk through those things with me. It's been a 10-year journey of learning how to do that better, which allows me to start managing my mind and my emotions instead of letting external things manage my mind and my emotions. And so those 5 things I talked to you about are all external things that affect my peace, but
Mm.
I have control over my mind and my attitudes and my actions. And then when I invite the Prince of Peace to come into that
Mm-hmm.
and I allow Christ to be the center of my life, there's a song in there somewhere. It makes sense. When I
Yeah.
allow him to do those things, I can still have internal peace, regardless if nothing changes in those other 5 circles of my life. Um, Giant's got a book called The Peace Index, and they dig down deeper into that. I've got a link I can
Hmm.
share that you can go in and do that free assessment, and it gives a
Yeah.
lot more color and description to do that. But when you do that and you rate that on your subjectivity, you know, your scores may be different or you may score them different, but that's your subjectivity and that's your reality. And then that gives you meaning and clarity as you work through those things. And then you don't have to be dominated by those. You do start to experience a level of control. And then it also, what is really my purpose? I may be working really hard on some things that aren't having the return that I would like. They aren't as life giving as I had hoped. You know what? Maybe I need to make some changes. And so those five
Mm.
factors just give me a lot of clarity to sit down with other people, people that coach me that I will consult with, and it gives me a point of reference to have those conversations with people.
I love it. So the other question I had for you, there's a lot of people I know that they are the one man band, that
Hmm.
know that they're wearing all the hats. How do you offload the hats? How do you delegate, especially if you don't have like a ton of money to pay someone's salary to be your
Right,
assistant or whatever?
right.
Like what have you done there, if anything?
I had to end up on the floor and realize I had to take off hats. It wasn't an option. Oh, I should or I would like to. It's like, oh no,
Yeah.
you have got to make some wholesale changes. Um, but I think you start with the one that's causing you the most pain.
Mm.
Um, I think I invested in the ranch. I did property maintenance. I maintained my house, my car, equipment in our coffee roasting company, but I did not invest in myself. And a lot of people say, "Oh, I can't afford to get a coach. I can't afford to do this or that." And I go, you've got to get out of the mindset that that's an expense
Mm.
and a cost, and lose that accounting mentality and say, you know what, this is an investment. And so if I would have started doing that at 26 and invested in a coach and whatever I could have afforded at that time, it's going to be more than what you think you have or what you can do. But I looked at how much I spent over 10 years when I was in an ER and I had medical expenses and counseling and all the other things that I went through. I spent 4 to 5x on just recovering. You think about your house that catches
Oh
on
man.
fire or has mold or water damage. I mean, it cost me so much more just to be restored and get back to whole than if I would have done some things holistically. And you think about holistic medicine. And so and that's what I tell guys in their or any young leader in their late 20s, 30s, and early 40s that you've got to invest in yourself. And
Wow.
and it cost me more and it cost me longer. What I get excited about with working with emerging leaders, if you do it now, you've got so much longer of a runway than I do at 57 that the return on your investment for that is exponential. I spent about 50 grand more than what it should have if I would have done it holistically and proactively. I mean,
Mm.
that could have been in real estate. I could have been talking to you about let's invest in some property in Waco or in Norman, Oklahoma here. I could have invested that. I could have just parked it and just got minimal amount of interest. I didn't have the money. I found the money and spent it. But man, what if I would have invested that? And I think that's
Mm.
for me. That's the wake up call. If I can help people spend a little money on the front end and invest it wisely in themselves, they'll have resources and also have the capacity to invest more in their future, in their business, themselves personally, and their family.
That's so good. Okay, and then if someone is like, I need that. I need a coach. I need to invest in myself. Where should we point them? It sounds like Giants is one thing. Like what other resources would you point people
Uh,
to that need this? That need to put some
I
money into
yeah.
themselves, to their internal world.
Man, I love Giant because they've got, over 1,000 guides all over the world. I work primarily with guys, but I can point you to ladies in the Giant ecosystem that do that really well. And what I like about Giant, you can hop on and just subscribe to their platform and their operating system, and you've got tools that you can do self study just to get started.
There
And
you
if you,
go.
you know what, this is good. I mean, I've got a treadmill, and I've got some weights in my house, but I am a lot more healthy when I have a coach or a trainer. And so, but don't let, oh, I can't afford a trainer right now to stop you. I think once you get in, you hop into Giant, and hop in. What I love, they don't now in the world that we live in, they don't have to necessarily be in your same zip code. I mean, you and I are, we're several hundred miles away, but technology allows us to bridge the gap. And so
Yeah.
I think I would point folks, if it's self leadership and some life coaching, man, I would sure start them at Giant. And
Yeah.
you can hop on, you can go to Overlander Consulting. Find me on LinkedIn. I'm sure you may put something down on the show notes, but man, if I'm not a good fit, man, I would love to help. As a connector, I would love to help get you plugged in with the right
Yeah.
people that will help you on your leadership journey.
Come on, guys, hop on if you need that. Overlanderconsulting.com. Reach out to Todd on LinkedIn. There you go. And then Todd, I'm curious, like, especially with, I mean, what are you doing now? What goals do you have? I'm curious, like, where are you going in life? Not just in life, but like, what goals do you
Yeah.
have now? Like, it seems like you kind of made it in many ways. You're financially free. You're helping other people now. It's just amazing. So what are your goals now at 57?
It's two pronged. I mean, God brought us back to Norman, and that's a whole nother story and probably a whole nother podcast. But I went to college here, um, married a girl that I did Young Life in Norman with. It was a 28-year journey to come back, and so I'm plugged in with a group called Leader Core. That one of my passions is to pour into people who are leading in our community and help them be healthy leaders. You change a community. I mean, you can change a state, you can change a nation. And so I have a big heart for city transformation, for men to be healthy and leading from the front. But I love coffee. Shocker to anyone who knows me. I really want to take this to the coffee industry, whether you are a shop owner or a roaster or an exporter or an importer, or you know what, you manufacture some of the best and baddest coffee equipment. I want to take these principles to help them lead in a healthy manner. Well, if you're into specialty or craft coffee, you understand the coffee scale, and 82 and above is considered craft or specialty coffee.
Mm,
You're not going to be happy or satisfied with coffee that's graded at 75 or 60
yeah.
or 50 or below. I mean, that's just not anywhere on your radar, on your standards. But for so many of us, we will tolerate that in our personal health, and we're multiplying in our leadership and our culture and our organizations. And so I love working with I mean, people that are executives or C-suite folks in the coffee industry, or if you're a solopreneur, to do that and give you the tools that you can implement that in your team. What I love about the Giant stuff, it's not time or cost prohibitive. You've just got to be hungry. You want to invest in yourself at the same level you do as a cup of excellence or as a barista in coffee excellence. That's probably the area that I'm most passionate about. And with technology, I can be sitting in my little Zoom room office here and be engaged with folks in that leadership capacity and coaching anywhere in the world. So I think those are
Yeah.
Norman for local, and then coffee industry, anywhere there's someone who's hungry that wants to be better, or find themselves stuck in a pain point and they don't feel like they could not get out like I did back in 2016.
Wow. That's awesome. Love it. Well, maybe we should just do some coaching right now. I'm in the coffee industry. I'm solopreneur. I
Hey,
feel like I'm ripe for the picking,
well,
in
you
many
excite
ways.
me when I get to have conversations with guys and going, oh wow, there's a smarter way to do this. And kind of my mantra is, just because you can doesn't mean that you should. Um,
Mm.
the theologian Bono says that there's certain things you shouldn't be too good at: smiling, crying, and celebrity. And celebrity won't ever probably be a problem for me, but man, I did a lot of smiling to cover up all the crying going on in the inside. And so
Mm.
if I can help guys do that and lead well and help them down some of those paths, I called my consulting business overlanding for a reason, because if you're an overlander, the journey is as important as the destination. And I was so
Mm.
focused on destination that I really missed out on so many life lessons and things that I
Mm.
could enjoy on the journey had I had a different
Yeah,
mindset and I had some guys surrounding me to remind me of that.
that's awesome. As we wrap up here, I want to ask you, what does leaving a legacy mean to you, both financially and spiritually?
Yeah.
What does that mean to you, Todd?
We've got a family mission statement on our fireplace that we wrote out at the boys ranch when we got frozen in on an ice storm, man, probably 10 or 15 years ago. And I think going through some of my own trauma and pain growing up, what I realized is that my ceiling is my kid's floor. So
Mm.
physically, emotionally, spiritually, financially, I want to see my kids go well beyond where I've been. So I want to set them up for success. And I think I along those lines, I want to make sure they have a clear definition of what success is. And that success is walking out who you are and how God created you to be, not who you think other people expect you to be or what you think you ought to be.
Wow.
Brendan Manning talks about oughts and shoulds. And man, I ought and should myself to death for so much of my life. And so I really started to believe that I am who God says I am. I Those are the things that drive me now in the morning, is making sure that that authentic identity is ingrained and part of the DNA of my daughters and son-in-laws and future son-in-laws who
Yeah.
work with you at For
Yeah.
Keeps. I'm so excited to see them. I just remember we went through, child dedication early. We talked about train up a child in the way they should go, and when they're old, they won't depart from it. And so, to watch my kids go well beyond the runway that I have, and seeing them
Mm.
being world changers and doing things far beyond what I could ever hope for or imagine in my own life. That's what I would think is legacy and success. It's not my portfolio or the balance sheet on my business or my personal financials.
Wow. That's awesome.
Those
Yeah, I
things are
love that.
important, but they're not the most important thing. So I think to end on, what I say is have a mindset of kingdom statements and not financial
Mm.
statements.
Have a mindset of kingdom statements and not financial statements. Shoot, that's so good. I received that. I needed to hear that actually. I feel like I've been focused really heavily on building up my financial portfolio over the past 2-3 years, and it's been really fun. And
And it's
I'm
important.
trying to do it
Yeah.
healthy, and I'm trying to not lose my soul along the way. And I want to continue to keep my life and everything I have surrendered to Jesus. But I also want to make more money. So it's
Right.
like that's kind
Right.
of what this podcast is about in many ways. Is like, how do we make more money, but also leave a legacy to our kids that's not just monetary. Like
Right.
that's a very small part of it, just like you said. And so
If those
awesome
numbers are
stuff.
low, you're doing it at the expense of what, and you've got to decide, what
Mm,
is the what, what's it costing me, and is that a fair exchange? And if it's not, then you need to make some course corrections.
wow.
I think you can. Dr. Randy Ross talks about in the book Remarkable, said you can make a difference and make a dollar. And
Mm,
so when my ultimate purpose and mindset is kingdom, I can do both. And I can't be generous if I don't have money. So it takes money to be generous, but I can also be generous with my time, my life experience.
yeah.
And so, what I love about Giant and using the metaphor of a Sherpa is once you've had someone guide you to the top, to the summit, and you come back down, it's not just about you. The next time, you take two or three people back up with you, and now you're the Sherpa, and you start leading and
Mm,
developing and creating other Sherpas. And so that's exponential. And so that's exponential growth. And I think that's the legacy. That's the answer to the question you asked me about legacy.
beautiful. Beautiful. Gosh, this was a rich time, my friend, and it's so good to meet you finally. And yes,
Finally, face
if
to
you didn't catch
face
it already,
or
I do.
virtually face to face.
Yeah, yeah. I do work with Todd's future son-in-law, and actually Evan is the one who was like, "Hey, you should interview my father-in-law. Like, it'd be really good. So, and it was awesome. So
Well, and he and Ellie are hungry and passionate and going after some things. It's their story to
yeah,
tell. But man, I'm excited for that. So thank Evan for the connector here and making the connection and
yeah,
inviting me to be on. And I can't wait to come to Waco and us do this
yeah.
not just virtually, but face to face here.
Let's do it again, face to face. Hey, you already mentioned LinkedIn, overlanderconsulting.com. How else can people, if they want to follow you or reach out to you for maybe coaching, how can they do that?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at Overlander Consulting or Todd at overlanderconsulting.com. I'm pretty reachable, so just shoot me a message there. Would love to schedule a call to connect and be some encouragement and hopefully point you in the right direction. If I'm not someone that could walk alongside you, I'm excited to be able to do that when it's the right fit.
Love it. All right. Another episode in the books on the Legacy Investor Podcast. Super stoked about the future of this podcast. Guys, I have the goal of once a week for all of 2025. And then at the end of next year, I'm going to, reevaluate, see if I'm still liking this. But so far, I'm loving just making connections with people. And I'm loving the feedback I'm getting from people about this podcast. So thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.